Hello, all of my friends out there in TikTok. Frick! Twitch
You
land.
can tell what she's been doing.
I've been on TikTok a lot today. I would like to point out the crown in the room. I was sent this gorgeous crown from a friend of mine on TikTok, and I love it so very, very much. So I decided to wear it tonight, at least for a little while. Oh, you can't see it all the way. I'll scrunch.
I can always take the camera up a little higher.
Just see how pretty it is.
Is it focusing on you? Okay.
It's so pretty. Okay, anyway, totally didn't tweet your names are backwards. Oh, our names are backwards.
Oh, no.
Why are our names always backwards on this one?
Well, it's whenever I reconnect the cameras, it decides suddenly where it wants to put us.
That's true. Okay, anyway, well, Weston's fixing that. Welcome to today's episode of Tabletop Terrain Talks, where we talk about tabletop gaming, terrain, and other nerdy things. And we be nerds and wear crowns, because I want to. I am Hayley Bell. If this is the first time that you are seeing us, I'm not Weston.
Nope, it's right now.
Okay, awesome. It's right. And this is the amazing and wonderful Weston Bell.
Hello. Welcome, everyone.
I'm going to fix my camera.
It wasn't low before.
It is now.
I got to fix it in different ways. Just wait. I do the thing.
Lurking, listening. Hi, Synthnight.
Go ahead and lurk, you
Lurk
lurker.
all you want, my dear. But yeah, so...
There, now they get your full crown.
Full crown.
They can see it in all its glory.
It's beautiful.
And darkness.
It's very exciting. Anyway, for announcements for this week... our podcast is being updated on a very regular and consistent basis because I am awesome. And
you found an easier way to do it.
And I found a significantly easier way to do it. And it should be up to date probably in the next week or two, where it's like up to date to the episodes that are current.
Yes.
So that'll be fun. This Friday is going to be my final episode for our current story arc before Weston is switching over as the GM for our final story arc for the Scions.
It is going to be a long one.
I know, but it's just weird saying
it is.
Final.
Oh,
jeez, that was loud. So that's going to be on Friday, 8 p.m. Mountain Daylight. Same channel, same time. Just come hang out.
Same game channel, same game time.
It's true. And we left off the last episode with two golden dragons, ginormous golden dragons going at it.
That we're going to fight.
They were, yeah, maybe.
Haley is like, no, you don't fight these. And we're like, dude.
I know, everybody.
You haven't given us a combat.
Wait, the Scions end soon? No. It's sort of, but no.
So,
Weston, you want to explain?
So I will explain. So we will actually be. So yes, I will be GMing the final arcs of this story with the Scions, which will go. It's going to be a little while. Don't think that it's going to be a short ending.
No, it's going to be a hot.
There's a lot I got planned, but then we will be later this year ending the Scions, and then we'll start the new campaign, which we'll be doing a one-shot in the new homebrewed world for the new campaign with almost a zero session with our characters in 2 weeks.
Yes. So that's a good segue. So in 2 weeks, we are going to be doing a one-shot that is it's a charity one-shot. It's in our new world, Valley Toss, which is very, very exciting. And we are doing this to support those who struggle with mental health issues, and all money raised during the stream will go to a charity for suicide prevention and mental health.
Yeah, I'll have the exact charity. We're just finalizing some stuff, and I'll have the exact charity soon.
Yes. So we've
got one we want, and we just got to make sure everything works.
Yeah, we just got to finalize some details and stuff. But so that is going to be on the 13th. It is also our 1-year streaming anniversary. So it's going to be kind of a big deal night.
We've been doing this for 1 year. So wait, we did our last stream right by your birthday?
We did at the very beginning of May. The 13th isn't like exactly the 1 year, but we started streaming in May.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's when we're celebrating it. is that day.
All right, it's that day. Because I was like, wait, we streamed, like, did we stream on your birthday or something?
No, we did not stream on my birthday.
Which, if you get my little hint, it's Haley's birthday coming up.
My birthday is May 12th. So the day after my birthday, we're going to do this awesome.
So on that stream, gotta show up and show lots of loves.
Lots of love. Okay, so that is going to be on May 13th. On May 16th, or 6th, not 16th. On May 6th, I am appearing with Q Times on their persistent campaign, Parliament of Owls. It's a Pathfinder 2nd edition campaign. I am very excited to be on it. Mm-hmm. It is a kind of a really big deal for me because they were one of the first people that we watched actual plays with. Well, and Pathfinder.
And more so, I watched a lot of their just like how to play, how to GM.
Mm-hmm.
I think I introduced you to the champion class by you watching their videos.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool thing. So that is pretty much it for our announcements, unless, Weston, you can think of anything else.
Nope. That's all I can say.
Cool. Okay. Well, then let's jump into this week's episode of TTRPG News.
And there.
Hello, and welcome to TTRPG News, April 25th, 2022. Okay. We have a lot of news today because D&D, Wizards of the Coast, did their big, bomb drop of information.
They did.
This last week. A whole ton of announcements. So we are going to try and get through these as fast as we can because there's a lot of them. So first off, Wizards of the Coast announced that they are bringing back an oldie but a goodie campaign setting guidebook, Spelljammer Adventures in Space.
Spelljammer actually was originally 1989.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's like an old school. We're going back to the OGs. It's a trio of books,
quote unquote,
because they're only 65 pages long.
Yeah.
Spelljammer adds 6 new races and a host of new monsters and a 12-episode module for players to play. So it does take place in space, and it's kind of like D&D in space.
Yeah, and it is the 12-episode module is just I believe it's levels 3 to 6. Or something. It's only 3 levels.
It's the baby one.
It's not a huge module, so don't think you've got a full campaign out of this. They say they're 12 episodes, but what is an episode? They never used an episode before to define something, so it is not as big as it seems. In a lot of the art the promo images, I'm pretty sure they used some of their old monster manuals and things like that as the images and then just put the new book image on top of it, which is a fairly common thing in marketing. And so there's a lot of people that are getting a little unhappy because they feel like they were advertised one thing and it's something else. So
that this is a little bit of a cash grab?
Not a cash grab. It's just less than they expected. It's less content than they expected, but at $69 for the whole thing, you really thought you were going to get 3 full-sized books?
No, probably not.
So
that's a whole thing.
Second story. Baldur's Gate 3 has a release date finally. If you have not been following, Baldur's Gate 3 has been in early access for an eternity and a half. So it's great to hear that's actually going to release, considering that by now everyone's kind of played it.
Everyone who wanted to play it has already played it.
Full release is set for 2023 and it is currently in early access as it has been. I know it's over a year now of early access been available. So, yeah, but, maybe there will be some big thing at release. So everyone's a little trepidatious about oh yay, there's finally a release date, but we've already played this.
Yeah, everybody's already played it. All right, also announced Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. Journeys is a new anthology of D&D adventures written by 16 Black and Brown writers who created 13 adventures and 15 new locations based on their lives, culture, and myths. The presentation during the live that D&D did showed images from the anthology, which included pastel colors, bright landscapes, and new monster types. The release date for this book is going to be June 21st.
There is one that I do like it's interesting in the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel. One of the little adventure things that they have in there is one, generally there's there's a festival going on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is a equivalent of Day of the Dead. Done, but the dead are actually allowed to come back.
Oh, nice.
On that day, so it's Day of the Dead, pretty much it's a holiday, but instead of just like on this day we build shrines and then they actually come back from the dead on that day. So it's going to be an interesting module that way.
Hey, John, how's it going? Anyway,
Doom. When you come on, I need to get the Doom music, the soundtrack, the official one, and just play that when you come in. So that
John, and then the Dooms.
Yes, and you have both of them. All right, next, during the same live broadcast, Wizards of the Coast announced the release for a brand new D&D starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isles. This will be set. This set will feature digital onboarding tools versus the pen and paper tradition. So this is going to be like D&D Beyond.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They're going to be heavily utilizing D&D Beyond since they just purchased it.
Well, and you think about it, honestly, the digital format, once they've got it built, they don't have to pay for it to continue being there. Well, you do,
well,
but
you
not
have to
the
maintain
same.
it,
but not the same way that you have to ship out print and then ship every single box set that you're doing, especially with the shipping issues that are happening nowadays.
Well, I think it comes with an actual box set.
Does it?
And they have online things.
Yeah, but if they can push you more and more towards digital and less towards physical, I think it actually, for them as a company, is better in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so there is also a new adventure set in the world of Krynn that is coming in late 2022. We have reported on this previously when they very, very first announced it, but they gave a little bit more information of it in the live broadcast. Jeez. It's going to be titled Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. Also announced was a new board game titled Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn. So that'll be fun. It's like an actual board game where you have a thing.
That's cool. Well, I know that in the new Dragonlance setting, they've got a new class that is the Moon Sorceress. And it has gotten in the Collective Arcana. It's the Arcana, Unchained Arcana. There you go. Unchained Arcana. The people have loved that new class, the Moon Sorceress.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Number 6.
Paizo announced they will be working with Gale Force 9 to make board games based on Pathfinder and Starfinder. The first Pathfinder level 20? Wait, what?
Yeah. Just
where the players take on the role of kobolds trying to escape an adventure on the cusp of hitting level 20. Release is set at the end of April. The second is Starfinder Pirates of Skydock, described as a competitive spaceship heist. Release is in August. MSRP is $60. That's interesting. I was like, wait, so you get start at level 20 and then it's like,
no,
nope,
your kobold's running
away from a level 20 adventure. That's a funny twist.
It is super fun. It's going to be a really exciting one. To answer your question, Synth Knight, Wizards of the Coast, aka Hasbro, the parent company, did purchase D&D Beyond.
Yep, already happened.
So they now own the #1 digital asset for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
So our last piece of announcement is Paizo is changing up the Starfinder lore. Titled Starfinder Drift Crisis, this 2-part adventure path will take players from levels 1 to 7, then from 7 to 13, respectively. The lore established in this adventure will be backward compatible for past Starfinder adventures and products and will be released in May of 2022. The idea is that there is a rift in space, kind of, and when people go into it, super strange things happen and they have to try and figure out what's going on. And I think it's like a time travel thing, honestly.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
It's the Starfinder multiverse of madness.
Essentially.
Because, everyone has to follow Marvel.
Yes, everyone has to follow Marvel. However, I do think it's interesting that they are saying it is backward compatible, which will be really nice because Starfinder has a really, really heavy AP.
Yeah.
Adventure Pass. Like a lot of what
but I wonder what
play
lore,
with
like what the lore is that they're wanting to change.
Where they're it's like it's created a whole new chapter essentially.
Interesting.
For it.
All right, we'll have to see.
Yes, and then for this week's community announcements, we have something that was submitted by Mech45. They have a new show that is starting on the Twitch channel D20 Enclave.
Oh, the D20 Enclave.
Yeah, they have a new show starting. It's being DM'd by Mech45, and it's called Sanguine Isles. I have a feeling that it has something to do with blood.
Maybe.
Or vampires.
Possibly.
Anyway, it's starting on April 24th at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It is going to be live streamed on their Twitch channel. So it starts on Saturday. Did I say 24th? 29th.
There we go.
Jeez Louise. Starting April 29th. Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time with DM Mech 45.
Wow, it's okay.
Maybe I shouldn't do this part anymore. Anyway, we have been DM'd by Mech 45. Absolutely awesome experience. Super, super fun. So go check them out if you are looking for a new show to start with episode 1. Because
do we know what system he's using?
No.
Okay.
I do not.
Because he uses a lot of different systems. I know I played a Cyberpunk with him, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Playing that game. So definitely go check him out. Great GM. And I'm sure it'll be a fun game.
It'll be a great game. So that is it for today's episode of TTRPG News. Yep.
Monday, April 25th. And welcome back. And we lost Hayley. After that, it was just too much for her. She could not handle the excitement of all of the news that has come out. I don't know about you. Like, how many of you guys on the stream, put it in the chat if you watched the whatever it was called, the D&D. Well, I don't remember what it's called, but the live thing they turned on. Yeah, Hayley turned invisible. We cast invisibility on her. It's a new spell I've got. Picked it up. But how many of you actually watched the live that they did where they announced all of the new stuff? Anyone watch it? I'll wait for the... Nope. Didn't they? Okay. See, I watched it and it's like, okay. Made a big deal about... Okay, Starjammer. Really cool. But then everyone kind of started getting their stuff. A couple of streamers who were at PAX, they got actual stuff already. And they were like, a little underwhelmed. It's like, okay, this is less than I wanted. And that's the hard thing is like when it's something this big, they've been teasing Starjammer for a long time. The April Fool's joke put out in 2021 by one of the main writers at Wizards of the Coast was working on Space Clown right now. He was, because it wasn't actually an April Fool's joke. But like they've been building this up for a long time.
Yeah.
So then to have it come out and have them be short little booklets has made a lot of people upset. But at the same time, like it's using the same rule set. It's not, they don't have to do a new rule set. They're not using new classes.
They're just rebooting it.
They're just like, hey, it's the same game, but in space. It's not even really in space. It's more the ethereal plane. So
really?
Yeah, so it's the realms between, which is why it's boats. It's not actually space.
Oh, yeah.
It's the ethereal plane that they're going through. So it's not even really space in a way.
Because like when we first heard it, we didn't know that it was a previously published thing. And the first thought that we had was like, oh, they're taking the Pathfinder or the Paizo route.
Yeah, the Starfinder.
They're doing Starfinder.
But yeah, it was... apparently, big thing. People have been asking for it for a long time. But I'm like, it's not a full new game. It's 5e, and here's your monsters. here's your player, and then here's some little adventures to get you started.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I think for people who the nostalgia factor will be really fun, but until they actually release real, like, new original stuff for it, it's not going to be.
Well, and this is new stuff. I mean, you got the monsters like that, but again, it's just it's another campaign setting.
Yeah.
Without, like, most campaign settings have new subclasses, new games, stuff like that, and this doesn't have any of that. And I think that's where a lot of the letdown is coming from. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, most people, they want their classes. They want to go build a new class that they've never built before and do that. They're going to get that in Kryn.
Yeah, they're getting that.
There's some new classes there that have been come out in the Unchained Arcana. Mm-hmm. But not for Starjammer.
Well, and I wonder too if maybe because they've been so focused on Dragonlance and bringing all of that in and creating all of this new product for it, that Spelljammer got shafted.
That's possible.
And it was just like, well, we're basically just revamping this, so there's no reason for us to, like, put a lot of time into it. So here you go.
Yeah, but they're only revamping the other one because there are more books written in the other one.
It's true. So, and I feel like it's a more famous thing, too. It's going to bring a lot more people in.
I don't know, because I personally feelings pretty much everyone who's playing, they're the ones who have read Dragonlance.
Well, I know people who purchased the original trilogy because of the announcement. They've never read it before. So I think it's doing both. I think it's selling more books for them to sell more books for the books that are coming out.
Which is nice.
And then it's also bringing Dragonlance fans into D&D.
Well, and they have the new trilogy of Dragonlance books that are going to be coming out.
Yeah.
So there's more marketing things that they can sell there than they've made on the Spelljammer side.
Yeah. That's awesome that you're working on a kid-friendly TTRPG. You play as criminal birds. Is it based off of Angry Birds? Why are they so angry?
Just because they're criminals doesn't mean they're angry.
They're angry birds. They're so angry.
Jeez. They're all broody rogues. It's a full party of brooding rogue birds. Which means they all have to be ravens and crows.
We actually had a raven show up on, like, one of our giant trees in our backyard, and I was so excited to see it because we normally only see crows out here. Mm-hmm. We don't ever see ravens, and ravens are like 2 times the size of a crow. And so it's, like, cool to see such a big bird.
It's a big bird.
It's a big bird. So
tonight's topic, how to be a lazy GM and have amazing
sessions. This was actually a suggested thing that Weston wanted to talk about because it drives him crazy that I'm able to off the cuff create things.
It doesn't actually drive me crazy. Like, you continue to feel like I'm angry at you that you can do it. I don't know. Maybe that makes you feel better. If it made me angry, it doesn't make me angry. I'm amazed by it. Mm-hmm. That you can just do that, and I think it's so cool.
Should news articles you see as realistic plot points.
There you go.
That'd be funny.
But yeah, you and I have very different GMing styles.
We do.
Like, a lot of this last campaign, you did a lot of lore reading, I think, of the Boneyard.
Yep.
But as far as actually what happened and a lot of things, you just, like, make them off. Okay, I'm just going to make this up right now, and this is what's going to happen. Some of our most iconic sessions from the whole Scions campaign have been completely made up. Your very first session where we went through you had to go through the invisible barrier. Mm-hmm. The dream with Nethys that my character had.
That was an off the cuff thing.
A lot of those things have been made completely off the cuff. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about...
Your dream with Pharasma was also off the cuff.
Yep. So I just wanted you to kind of talk about, all right, so how does your brain start this? So you're in the GMing chair, you're like, I haven't prepared anything tonight. And then where do you go from there?
Where do you go when you have no idea? Okay, so I'm gonna take the crown off.
See, Hayley doesn't do any random generators, so there's none of that.
Nope, I don't do random generators. I don't do a lot of stuff. I have. So one thing that I do is I make sure that I have names so that if you interact with a random NPC that I can have a name prepared, because I have been caught without a name prepared before, and that was very...
Where do you get the names?
Embarrassing. I don't know if I should say this. I get the names from my work.
Okay.
So I work in a profession where I see a ton of different names from all over the country, and really the world. And I just find nice, like, ones that I really like, and I write them down.
It's not a bad way to do it. So yeah, you work, because you work customer support. And so
technical support.
Yeah, for like HR stuff. So it's like tons of names. Tons of names.
I'm going through lots of names all the time. So if I see any cool ones, I will write them down. That's the way that I do the names, because I have a hard time making up names on the spot. If I did, it would be like John for everything, or
My
Angela.
name's Steve.
It says Steve. It's
Steve.
Alan.
Okay, so
that's how I come up with my names is that, but that's one of the few things that I don't just kind of move with.
All right.
So in this, to give you kind of a breakdown, when I started my very first session, I was not sure what I wanted to do or where we were going to go. And I was freaking out because I'd only GM'd a handful of times previously. And this time I was doing it on live stream, and I was really nervous. And Weston can attest, I was like a little freaked out.
That I can attest to this. I will testify.
It's Dooms. Oh, and hi, a geek of one's own, and Iraq Babylon. Eric. Is it Iraq or Eric? I like to make sure I'm saying your guys' screen names right. So let me know if it's Iraq or Eric. Anyway, so I went into it really nervous, but previous to me being a GM, I have spent the last 20 plus years in theater. So I started as a very young child, and I began to do theater, and a lot of that was improv training and how to be theatrical. I also read incessantly. Like, legitimately, I don't go anywhere without a book. Didn't go anywhere without a book pretty much from the time that I realized books were a thing. So I had all of this stuff jammed in my head before my very first time GMing. And I think that's one thing that people who are lazy GMs are really good at, is retaining creative ideas through the rest of their lives. So movie plot lines, book plot lines, theater stuff, like, you just hold on to things. So we go into this very first session, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I needed us to get somewhere and do something, and I wanted to introduce one character, but I couldn't figure out exactly what to do with it. So we're halfway through the session, and I'm thinking, frick, we gotta get him out. They've got to go do something. And it was like, it popped into my head, make this character disappear. And then it gives them a reason to go find them. Then we're going through into the forest, and I'm trying to make it interesting. And while we're going through the forest, I have the one thought of, okay, crap. If they're going to see this person, there's no way that they're just going to be able to waltz into the room. And I'm having all of these thoughts while we're playing. So then I'm like, okay, cool. So I've got to have something. Do I know what the barrier was even to this day? No, I have no idea what it was. But I do know that I needed you to roll for something. So I made you roll
early
for
on for
fortitude.
you, actually having rolls in our sessions was like,
it was hard,
really scarce.
It took me time to feel comfortable with like doing skill challenges and things like that.
So let me back up just a little bit.
Okay.
So first thing was, get acquainted with stories.
Oh, did you see that? It's both. It's E-Rock and if they're using the first name, Eric.
Oh, there we go.
I like it.
So get acquainted with stories. Like, go find your favorite stories and be like, okay, start thinking critically about them. Mm-hmm. What makes this scene good? What made this story interesting?
Mm-hmm. What made this like a stay up all night novel versus a different novel? Like stuff like that. And if you become a curator of story, it becomes a little bit easier for you to start crafting story on the fly because your mind is already in that mindset of creativity and storytelling, and you can just think of like, oh, well, they did this and this, whatever, so we're going to go that direction and go do that. I know GMs that have actually ripped full plot lines from movies off into their stories, and their players had no idea. No clue that that's what they did. So I think that kind of started for me was having that basis, having that foundation to have stuff just come out of nowhere. But also I kind of have an advantage because I know you so well and I know what's going to be interesting for you. So when I do come up with stuff just on the fly, I know how to make it interesting specifically for you. Which is one real advantage of GMing with similar people again and again, and especially doing a small party with us, the party of two, because then rather than becoming, I had one person say it, instead of suddenly being an ensemble show, it's a feature film. Instead of being, an epic fantasy where, great example, the Wheel of Time books by Robert Jordan, you have so many different characters you're following. And so but if they were all together, giving them each enough screen time to do stuff, it makes it really difficult. But if you just have the one main character and you have to build a story and craft a story for that one main character, that becomes a lot easier to figure out. You're like, okay, I know what their class is. I know what their background is. I just have to make a story for that character. Do you know what's interesting, though, is GMing for our friends who were guests on the show for a while. And I'm sad they're not coming back this next week. But GMing for them, like the party with 3 people, was a little bit easier because you guys spent a little bit more time discussing stuff and going through things and having your own moments. And I was able as a GM to sit back and just kind of be like, okay, and at first it was really weird. And I was like, I have nothing to say right now. Okay, I'm just going to sit here. But imagine if you had to write a full campaign and you had to satisfy all 3 of us on what would be an interesting story. Well, and I do see that as a little bit more difficult, but I did kind of do that as I was going through with our storylines in the fact that I gave you guys all a moment with your previous loved ones. We had really emotional moments where they got to see loved ones who had died. And I made sure that there was a moment for every player that was going to be impactful. And I think that was a lot of fun GMing that, where it was like this really emotional moment for these players. It was like, I don't know, it was very satisfying for me. Well, and one thing about doing a small game with just the one is that there's no party banter. There's no party discussion. There's no antics like that happen. So you actually have to be prepared to do a lot more story in a small party than you do in a large party. Yeah, there's no like randomly deciding to go on a heist or to like go check something out because one of the players is like, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to the library and we're going to like scare him because that was so funny. I freaking love that. I take aspects. So Starry Night says, I take aspects of mythology in any work of fiction I took into my campaigns. Yeah. Well, and I think the best people do that. There are no original stories now. All the stories that could be told have been told. But the difference in all of them is the way you tell it. Well, and that's one thing I know for me, whenever I'm coming up with stuff, it's like, okay, here's a story I love. Hi, Joel.
Hi, Joel.
Welcome, Joel. By the way, I just wanted to let everybody know the avatars, if you don't like what your avatars, we have a lot of pink avatars, cute little pink dragons, which there's nothing wrong with cute little pink dragons. But if for some reason you don't want a cute little pink dragon, you can change your avatar. If you are on your PC, you can go to our About section and you can see all of the different avatars you can choose from, including ones for 100 bits, which is like $1. You can change your avatar to something else. And I believe it changes always.
Yes, you then own that one.
Yeah, so then like every time you pop into our stream, your avatar will be different. But there's Legend of Zelda and...
There's Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, and Dark Souls. There
we go.
Solaris from Dark Souls.
Yeah, so...
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun. So if you have any desire to change your avatar, you can. Just wanted to let you know. You have options. So one of the big ones that was impactful for you was the dream sequence.
It's the one time we've actually interacted with Nethys in any way, because both of our characters are divine casters. You're a champion. I'm a cleric. But really, because I've been jamming more heavily throughout it, there's been really no exploration of my god, of Nethys. And that was very interesting to have that. Granted, Nethys is a very aloof god. Doesn't really get involved in stuff, so it makes sense for him not to from a lore perspective. But it was very cool to suddenly be kind of pulled in on that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing in GMing, you're making a story where they get to be the heroes. Everyone in life wants to feel special. There's a reason why the chosen one trope continues to get written, because everyone wants to be special. So if you can do things that make your people's characters the special one, then they like it. Because in life, you're generally not the special one. So in the game, I'd like to be the special one. Yeah. Because I am the chosen one.
I am the chosen one. Whack. Right. Sorry. If you know what that quote is from, you get 10 points to Gryffindor.
You see, you just gave it away a little bit more, though. Because everyone knows that.
Everybody knows that. So in this dream, Weston's character Az goes down kind of through this forest, and he realizes that the forest is made of paper, like books, and they all have things written on them. And that the one description that I know that you were really excited about was the idea that the sound of the trees was like the skittering of paper. Yeah. That just went...
Because you got this idea of these trees are all made of rolled paper. And so the wind goes through the paper. Yeah. As they're standing there, I'm like, so he's the god of magic, so scrolls and books and stuff like that. So I thought it was really cool idea to suddenly pull in like that.
Yeah, and the thing that made it really cool to like explore as the GM, even though it was an off the cuff moment, is that I got to put my writer's hat on. So I got to describe what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it smelled like. So when you're describing a new scene to someone as a GM, you're wanting to go through the 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you touch? And when you have all 5 of those involved in a scene, then you can really have the players feel immersed. So having that be a major part of the way that I create, it really helped when I'm like throwing stuff just off the cuff, because then I'm able to say, okay, run through it. Like, what are they seeing? Well, this is what they're seeing. What are they smelling? It smells damp and like new growth or like freshly tilled earth. And this is where also reading comes in really good, because then you get really good descriptions.
So what they told us in school of read books holds true for this.
Yeah. Read the books. Read all the books. But so, okay, we got to see, smell, taste. Sometimes if you're in like a tavern or something like that, it's like you can almost taste the pig on the spigot. Or spigot, whatever.
Spit.
Thank you.
A spigot would be turning, the beer would come out of that.
Okay, that's true. And then, so hold on, I can't. Anyway, moving on. So you
The
go through all
senses.
5 of them. So you go through all 5 of them so that you really have the characters or the players immersed in what's happening. So when I was off the cuff creating this, I was actively building it in my mind. If you've seen The Matrix and it's that white space, that's what it was to start with. And I was like, oh frick, what am I doing? Where are we going with this? What's happening? And I was able to move through the scene because of my experience as a writer and as a creator and crafter that way. So see, smell, taste, sound, feeling, emotion. Yeah. I don't do the emotion one because I don't want to tell the players how they feel about what's going on.
And I can see that because
I mean, every once in a while I'll say you feel unsettled.
Yeah.
Or especially in the Boneyard, I guess that's not true. I did tell the players, like, this is how you feel heavy and whatnot. But then when they took over the scene and began doing RP, I didn't say anything about the way they feel.
Yeah, but there's feeling ominous, feeling heavy. Mm-hmm. You can say that you walk in as silent, a heavy silence that pushes on your ears.
Yeah.
And that suddenly gives it that it's not a pleasant silence.
Yeah.
Because if you're a parent, silence is like, really?
That's bad. No, silence is bad.
Unless everyone's gone.
If everyone's gone, then silence is heavenly.
Yeah, so it depends on the silence there. But like you said there, like, it depends on the silence.
It's a situation.
I do see on the one side it being good, but from the other side, it's kind of interesting if you let them, they say they have the wrong emotional reaction, and suddenly they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And you're like, all right, you walk over here. Oh, monster bites your hand off. Like, you thought it was perfectly happy and fine. Mm-hmm. I almost think it's interesting to let them. Like, okay. And this is one thing I've found about improving, because in this case you're just improving this. When something happens and it's not what you expected, or they're not reacting quite the way you thought they would, double down on whatever the reaction they're having. Like, just go and don't hold it back, because they'll probably be like, and it's like, ooh, really? Oh, that's cool. And you're like, you're supposed to be scared. Okay, it's cool. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, it's totally cool, and you totally want to go investigate that because it's super awesome.
Yeah, look, it's a gold chest. Awesome. And you're like, it's supposed to be all ominous, but instead there's like, ooh, look at shiny. And then it's like, okay, that wasn't going to be, but now that's a cursed item.
You're like, yeah, we're going to play with that.
that suddenly is going to become a cursed item right there.
Exactly. Well, John, this was kind of your comment about the lazy GM method, but it's more like I'm doing my own version of lazy GMing. His bundle of holding sale ends tomorrow. Oh, maybe we should go get it.
Maybe you should.
Darkness swallowing the light, the crushing silence, the assaulting odor, the air clammy like slime against your skin, etc. Got a lot of fun descriptors. Yeah. If you can have a group of like descriptors that are kind of like your go-to, like, those really well and you can pull those out real quickly, then like, that's awesome. That's going to create a lot of fun moments for you as a GM.
Get acquainted with an online thesaurus.
And there are so many of them out there that are so cool, and there's so many designed for writers specifically, because I mean, even if you aren't a writer where you sit down and you're writing a novel,
you're a writer.
You are a writer as a GM. You are writing a story. You are creating the scenes. Weston recently listened to a podcast that's doing Curse of Strahd, and he's listening to 2 different ones.
Yes.
One of them literally read the descriptions from the module, and the other one did some really cool descriptors and created this really interesting like setting. And
well, they played with the ambiance a little bit more, instead of you see a darkened room filled with, I'm like, oh, okay. Delivery matters.
Yeah, it totally matters. And that was, I feel like, one of the reasons why a lot of the things that I've done off the cuff have worked so well, because I have that theatrical background.
Well, and when you write the description yourself or come up with the description yourself, you can then throw your emotion into it as opposed to just reading the description.
Exactly.
That's like, even if I was doing a module, while the party was doing something else right before, I would have read the description myself and then reworded it.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, never read someone else's words when you can say your own. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If, like, okay, this is someone else's words, I'm going to tweak this and I'm going to make this, like, I'm going to say this how I would say it. You
always need to make it your own.
Make it how you would say it, because then you will deliver it so much better. And delivery matters. Like,
it does.
When you go through and just read the description of a module, it has all the inflection of, you know, a kid reading out loud in grade school. And we went to the house, and there we were playing, and it's like, oh boy.
You're like, oh my gosh, okay.
Like, anyone who's listened to an audiobook knows there's a difference between reading and reading.
Yeah, well, and I've worked, I when I was a young girl, I would practice how far can I read without making a mistake, because I wanted to be an audiobook narrator.
Yep.
And I still would love to do that, but it's a lot of work.
More than you thought it would be, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more. Well, because I would have to start out as an independent audio narrator, and you have to do your own editing at that point. And I don't want to do my own editing. I'm just done with that. But yeah, delivery matters. Example, a smile came to her face in a happy tone versus a grim tone. Ooh.
And a smile came to her face.
And a smile came to her face.
And a smile came to her face.
Yep. Delivery matters. So if you're wanting to not have to do a ton of prep for sessions, what I would suggest doing, if you are kind of like me and you have a little bit more of that background where you read a lot and you kind of have a little theater or just theatrical in general, is get to know the lore fairly well so that you can then create some really cool moments just because you already know the lore.
Well, that's like the way that I managed to do off the cuff, because I'm not small prep.
No, his prep is intense, you guys.
I prep a lot.
He writes a book.
But the way I prep is I get to know the setting and the people well enough that even if you do something different than I expect, I know what those characters would do. I know their psychology and their brain.
Yeah.
And I just I have enough of a backstory and enough of an idea of who is this NPC, who is this character. Okay, you guys went in an opposite direction. So I'm that guy who's like, okay, you went in an opposite direction. The big bad was over there. You guys were about to... I thought you'd go over there and start dealing with him, but you haven't. So what's he going to do while you're off doing something else? And then I tried, because I try and make it a living world, because then I don't have to plan what would happen. It's a domino.
Well, tell our lovely viewers the idea that you had today of how to keep track of things happening in the world in real time.
Oh, I would love to. So I work in software development, and I was like, gosh, I'd love to build an app that had a bunch of clocks and dates. And they were in world. You could do them with in world, dates or whatever, but it was a countdown. And then you could set a bunch of story events on each of the clocks is like almost different alarms. And then you have one click. When you start a session, you click and the clock starts going for in-world time. And then you stop it when the session ends. And then it's just keeping track of, okay, here's what's happened. Here's how much time is passing. And then you could set it for, double time or triple time, however fast you want time to be flowing in your campaign. And then you just watch for those alarms to go off and be like, oh, this event's happening now. This event's going to happen in a couple of days. This event's, because by making it to where things are happening in the world, then it doesn't matter what my party members do. My party members
are still happening.
Things are still happening. My party members can be a part of it or not. And that then gives me a lot of freedom to where I'm not worried about what will you do.
Yeah. But Weston's already a product owner and has to deal with so much stuff. He doesn't have enough time to
I don't have time for another piece of software.
That.
But the
it's a really good idea though, so if you know.
But that requires a whole ton of prep, but it's early prep.
Yeah, it's like before the campaign even really starts, or before this story arc begins, or whatever.
Then instead, it's just like, okay, when I'm like got the session coming up, it's like, okay, I gotta go pick 2 monsters and decide what the encounter is, and that's all I really have to do.
Yeah,
because I've got the next 20 sessions. I know what are the world events that are all happening. And then it's just a question of, okay, which of these are you going to be able to interact with? And which one of these are you just going to have to deal with the fallout from? Because you didn't get there soon enough
to stop it.
Yep.
Well, and I always think about Matt Mercer in a comment that he made in campaign 2 at the end of one of the sessions. He said, if you guys had arrived 2 days earlier, you would have stepped right in the middle of this big battle thing that was happening. And I always found that so interesting because I was like, why? You're pick. You choose what's happening. You're the GM. What, like, I don't know. I've always just found that concept strange. But if you use something like that, like where things on a real specific timetable, then yeah, it makes sense. And it sounds like Matt does that, where he's like, things are happening in the world.
Well, and that's a normal thing in video games these days. In video games these days, RPGs, there's a lot of choice that you do. And if you choose this one, you don't get to choose this other one. And there are consequences if you don't choose that other one.
Because the through line still goes on the other choice.
Exactly. Yeah. The through line still goes on. And so that's something that, because I come from that background, is in my mind. So again, once the dominoes are all laid out, it takes me a long time and I got to set up all my dominoes. But once the dominoes are all set up, flick, the party goes, and then the dominoes are going to fall. And it's just a question of where are they at
when they fall.
What are they interacting with when they fall versus what did they not interact with, and that result down there is going to happen. And, those types of things are much more interesting. It's like if you hadn't gotten down into the sewers at that time, let's say you had delayed for some reason or something like that, there would have been more.
Or Anna got killed because she can't keep her mouth shut.
Yeah, that one I wasn't sure what to do with in that moment. But I would have, more and more people would have been killed, and then I would have had someone close to you get taken, like Michael's daughter. And Azamar Soul would have been very useful.
That's mean.
Yep. So that's the thing. It's like stuff like that I can then do because those events they're dominoes. They were going to continue taking souls. So then I could take anyone that I thought that would get a rise out of you, take their soul, and then suddenly it's a bigger deal to you than it was before. And so since the bad guys, because here's one thing always that's like, it's like the Lord of the Rings. The armies are attacking Gondor and everything like that, regardless of what Frodo's doing. And if Frodo hadn't gotten the ring there in, that if he had taken him longer, the race it would have all been wiped out. And those events are still happening while he's going to drop off the ring. And so setting that same situation up for your party makes it very interesting. But since you've got all these things that are just happening, then you don't have to worry about it.
No. And that's nice. A nice way to do things too is to do a ton of prep beforehand. And as a lazy GM, quote unquote, you do the prep beforehand, you don't have to think about it.
No. Once I get into the campaign, it's like, okay, I know what's happening for the next. It's like once we were dealing with the going into the sewers and stuff like that. I wasn't prepping. I was making terrain.
Yeah, you didn't prep.
That was my only prep, was making the terrain.
I know, because the terrain for that was really, really cool. But so yeah, that like what we were just talking about there. I think having the senses, creating scenes off of the senses themselves is really, really helpful. And then just thinking about what would be really cool. So like when I was creating the dream for Weston, it was just like, what would be really cool? And it would make sense. Who's Nethys? Nethys is a two-faced god. Well, yeah. And he is symboled by having half of his face, which is incredibly scarred and kind of horrid looking, and the other side being incredibly beautiful. And so showing the duality of Nethys himself. And then that, because I knew the lore so well about who Nethys was, it was easy for me to create a character off of that, because it was like I already knew it. So if you're going to be an off the cuff creator or GM, I feel like if you know the lore really well for whatever world you're working in, even if it's homebrew, if it's an AP or a module or whatever, like Weston and I have done a ton of study on the lore from Golarion for Pathfinder, because we wanted everything to be really set.
Well, and our world is actually, we like keep it true to the lore of other adventure paths that are official Paizo adventure paths. Like we keep the lore all the same. So you could technically play, listen to ours and then go play Hell's Rebels, which is the adventure path where they free Revenel from Cheliax, and pretty much everything will line up exactly. It'll be like playing the prequel to our campaign. Yeah, because we kept all the same characters, we kept the same situations and all the things that happened. So it was definitely a good thing for us to know the lore really well. So it sounds like we both have a similar thing there. It's like, if you don't want to have to prep a lot for the session, if you want it to be super easy to make the next thing, the big thing is know your world.
Yes.
And know the players, like know your characters. Because if you know them really well, that's not hard to do.
Well, and then the final part of it is practice. Because the only thing that really, really gets you good at doing off the cuff is just practicing. And you can do off the cuff, like improv full sessions, as long as you're practiced at doing it. Us going into the boneyard, I had some very basic things that I wanted to do, but pretty much all of the skill challenges, all of the roles for different, like being sickened one and things like that. Most of that was just I just came up with,
and that's even easier. That's even easier in D&D, because in Pathfinder, you add your level to your proficiency. So your proficiency is going to go up and up and up and up. In D&D, since you have the bounded D20 system to where, pretty much all your stuff was within 1 to 20, it might go up to 25 high levels or stuff like that. It's pretty much like, is this hard? Is this fairly easy? It's a 10. Okay. Is this somewhat hard? It's a 15. Is this really hard? It's a 20. If it's nigh impossible for any normal person, then it's a 25. And that's it. So all you do going into something is like, okay, I want this to be kind of difficult. Make them do a skill challenge. I want them to have to work for it. Okay, suddenly this is a skill challenge. Well, what DC do I do for it? How hard do you want to make it, and how high do you want the possibility of failure? And how much are you willing to figure out what they're going to do if they fail?
Well, or making it as serious, like you deciding how serious you want this to be. Because the more serious you want it, the more how difficult it is, or the more skill challenges you throw in.
Right.
Into the scenes themselves.
Well, and then you can also do it to where, it's like, I was really scared I was going to fail that skill challenge with the portal. But one thing you can do, and we've brought this up before, is that don't make the skill challenge fail or succeed. make it how long is it going to take them. Are they going to have to redo it multiple times and allow them to do it multiple times? Because you don't want this to be a pass-fail thing.
Yeah.
You want this to be, maybe, here's a great way you could have done it. Let's say it failed. Say I failed the skill challenge to activate the portal. You then have it to where it's like, okay, this takes you a long time. You are working hard, doing this. You have to do it long enough, then suddenly you make me fatigued. And then when we go through the portal, Anna's being attacked by some creature that if we'd gotten there earlier, we would have gotten her out before then. Like, so there was something bad that happened because I failed, but it wasn't, you can't open the portal, you can't get to Anna.
Yeah.
Because that would have derailed everything. And then you have to make up a bunch of stuff, and not make up stuff because it's interesting. You have to make up stuff because, well, I boxed myself into a corner.
Yeah, and that's what you don't want to do as a GM. And if you're doing stuff if you have a style like mine where it's very improv heavy, I try to always give myself some kind of, sorry, these earbuds kind of hurt my ears a little bit. But I try to give myself an out for pretty much every situation that we are in that does not include just like Deus Ex Machina. Like,
it happens because it happens.
It happens. It's like, oh, well, this just happened. Like, I try really hard to give outs that make sense and have.
Because that would, I think, be the biggest thing. Here's the biggest thing I think I would say about being the low prep GM. Anything you're going to do, try and figure out, okay, if they failed, like while they're doing it, think, okay, if they fail, how do I make this to where I don't have to rewrite the rest of the the evening? Like, how can I do this to where they failed, but we can still move forward? If you can do that, then suddenly it becomes a lot easier. Because, like, I know when I first started, like, I felt like I had to have every single eventuality planned for.
Yeah.
I had to have every single, like, I literally made a town, and I named every single building, and had every single, like, it was ridiculous.
It was insane.
The amount of prep I had.
I was like, holy crap.
But I felt like I had to do that because I'm like, well, what if you decide to go randomly talk to that person?
Well, and then I felt like I had to do that at the beginning. So then I felt super underprepared on everything until I realized, no. You're like, this is your style. This is the way that you GM. It's totally fine to GM that way.
Well, it's like, let's say that I had 10 random NPC names. And before I'd be like, okay, this NPC's over here, this NPC's over here, this NPC's over here. Why? They don't know which NPCs are where. You go over here. Oh, that person? That's Steve.
Steve, that is.
That's Steve. Now Steve's over there. It doesn't matter that Steve's over there versus over there because it doesn't really matter. They don't know. The only time you'd run into problems is when you've got players who are intentionally trying to screw you up.
Yeah.
Like me asking about all the books in the library.
Oh my gosh.
Now I
wanted to throw something at him.
I did that because I knew she was making everything up off the cuff.
It was such a jerky thing to do.
But it was funny, and you did great on it.
I did do great because I'm great.
See, whereas like in our first campaign arc in the library, if you would want to go and we would explore the library at all, I had 10 different books with synopsises, quotes, who was the author, and like I had all that stuff planned out for 10 different books in the library.
And he asks me, I need some books on the boneyard. And I'm like, frick. Okay. Okay. And then he's like, okay, at the beginning. And then, no, I want something past that. And I'm like, you're such a jerk.
I was almost like, I don't want any Pharasma. I don't want any of this propaganda about how Pharasma's evil because she abandoned the first world. The rest of the gods did too. Get over it.
I don't think, okay, and this is 100% something that I have gotten into legit arguments
She's
with
gotten
people
fights on the Pathfinder.
On Pathfinder, in Pathfinder Discords about Pharasma being evil because she abandoned the first world. Well, it's like, well, so did everyone else. Literally the entire entire Pantheon left the first world, and everybody blames Pharasma because she was there first. That's not her fault.
No.
There's a whole, like, Pharasma is cool. And everybody else can just...
If you don't like her, you're a jerk.
You don't have to go there. Anyway.
But yeah, so, like...
Sorry.
I did definitely, play a little bit there.
Yeah, you did.
On that, but also I knew that in order to do the setting of going into the boneyard, I'm like, okay, Hayley has to know stuff about the boneyard.
Yeah, I do.
So honestly, in that instance, what am I actually doing?
You wanted to know how much I knew about the boneyard.
No. I'm fishing for info about the boneyard so I can try and prep or like know what spells to do or something like that is really what I'm doing.
Well, your character would need that too, though. Like the character, at that point in the story, you guys knew you were going to go to the boneyard and you were going to have that be a part of your journey to go get Anna.
Yeah. Well, and so I was like, okay, no, but as a player.
This is a very sharp razor. That's nice. It's nice to cut things when it's this sharp.
Well, and do you want to know what makes it even better is if you put another piece underneath it. So you actually are just cutting through, because the second one you don't cut all the way through, and then you don't have to push as hard.
What? This is just really nice. We're working on terrain tonight.
Just put that underneath on your next cut, and then just don't try. You're not trying to cut through both of them. You're just trying to cut through the top one.
Cut through the top one. Okay.
But that was really what I was trying to do is just look at, okay, I want some knowledge. I know you have to have prepped something lore-wise for this, or you're going to make up lore for me.
Or I'm suddenly making up lore.
And the other thing is, like, if the GM makes it up, it's canon. Mm-hmm. Don't fight your GM on that. Nope. Like, don't go look up lore books afterwards and be like, you're wrong.
You were wrong. Well, and that's one thing that's been really difficult
I'm tempted to do that at times.
Why?
Because I've read so much lore that when you give me something that I know is not canon
totally
according
correct.
to Paizo, like there's this desire in me to be like, no, that's not the way it works. But I'm like,
that would be so rude.
I know it would be, but I'm that person that's like, no, the right answer is this.
Yeah, you are 100% that person.
And so that's where it's like, okay, nope. In this case, that is the case, or at least that's the case for now that they're telling us. Well, that's like one really hard thing about the way we GM is that there are things that you do in yours referencing what's happening on the larger story arc. And I'm like...
You're like, that's not what's happening.
Well, it's like there is a comment made. I won't tell you which one. But there was a comment made or a phrase used by Pharasma in my dream with her that she would not have made with what's actually happening.
Oh, well, you
but
work with what you've got.
I know you do. and that's one downside of the way that we do it. But that also tells you how much it doesn't matter that everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Because we've managed to flip back and forth. She doesn't know what's going on in my plans.
I have no idea what's happening at the border in Cheliax.
And yet it hasn't created any issues. The fact that she doesn't know. So the fact that you don't know things, no biggie.
It's not a big deal, and you can just create the lore as you move along. If you're playing in a world, and that's the thing that I found really interesting is in Pathfinder, people are very, very interested in the set lore by Paizo. In D&D, like nobody cares about the set lore in D&D. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear there's no one that cares about the lore at all.
I think that might only be true in Barovia.
But
Strahd.
that's like an AP though. I feel like that's different.
But people Ravenloft and then so like that. It's more than that because there were books, and it's a full setting. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
They're from a while back, but like that setting is so popular. That one might. Yeah. People might care a little bit more because people love that setting and love. I mean that campaign setting and that module is run online more than anything else.
Yeah, everybody. I feel like it's almost like a I feel like it's like a rite of passage to be a D&D GM is to
do
GM
Strahd.
Strahd.
Yeah.
Like you have to. You don't have a choice.
I think at some point it would be fun to do Strahd with you because you are a fan of the Gothic.
I am a big fan of the Gothic.
And it is very Dracula Gothic.
That's also why I've been, see, look at that. Aw, I cut it so pretty. Sorry, I'm very girly sometimes. You guys just are gonna have to
only sometimes. I know this might be a news to our
I'm super
fans
girly.
that she's a girl.
I'm super girly. Look, I have a crown. You guys. I have a friend of mine from TikTok sent it to me. I like it. I think it looks weird with the way that I put it on my head, so I'm taking it off. It's gorgeous though. I started like almost tearing, crying when I opened the box because I didn't know what it was, and it was such an amazing thing. Anyway, so a girl in my favorite TTRPG stream show. No sarcasm. It's a big ask to ask your GM to know everything.
Yeah.
And to pull everything out of a hat. There are very few GMs in the world that can do that. And I think that
Hayley just happens to be one of them.
No, that's not true. I think, somebody like Matt Mercer has kind of given a false idea of what it means to be a GM and what is required of the GMs because he knows so much. And he's never sat down and said, this is what everyone needs to do. He's actually said the opposite, that he is an enigma and he knows that. And he knows that most GMs are not like him. And he encourages people to do their own style of GMing. But there's very few people that can actually plan everything out and be like, this is the entire everything for this entire world. I know the national flowers for every one of the countries, and I know all of the blah blah blahs. Like it's very difficult to do that.
We don't say blah blah blah. If you can name that show,
that's another one. If you can name that movie, God, we lots of movie quotes tonight.
Yeah, we always do those. So that should be a game here, and I should figure out a way. I should start giving away points. To people
that
if they can name
so
the show
fun.
For the quotes that we do. I'll figure something out like
do
that.
Like movie trivia fantasy edition and have it be like fantasy and urban fantasy movies. So like everything from Princess Bride to
no,
we're
we
not
aren't doing Princess Diaries.
But like from Princess Bride to Harry Potter.
Well, and in actual fantasy, I hate that I go on to Amazon and I say, show me fantasy shows or movies. And they give everything that has a fanciful element to it.
I know.
Is fantasy.
It's because it's in the tags.
No.
That's more of like you need to get mad at the tag makers for that.
You mad tag makers, I'm mad at you.
I'm mad at you. So yeah, that's kind of like, I mean, Weston, did you have any other questions for how I do what I do? I mean, a lot of it, I hate that this is the way that it is, but like a lot of it is just because I have read so much and I am a writer myself. So it's easy for me to craft a scene.
Well, then that gives actually a big thing is practice.
Yeah, practicing.
Don't expect yourself to be able to do this off the cuff. At the beginning, you're going to have to practice your craft like every other skill out there.
Starry Night asks, Hayley, how do you do your hair? That's my question for how you do what you do. Nice. I have a curling iron. My hair is very long, as you can see. I'm actually growing it out to my waist. So it's going to be really long soon. And I curl it.
And we have a family of gnomes that live in our basement and come up and do our hair.
They do?
Yeah.
I thought I did my hair.
Oh, you only think that. We let you think that.
I just curl it, essentially.
Just like your players think their actions have,
consequences
meaning in the world. They think they're playing that what they do matters in the world, but the truth is you have already laid it all out and they are just your pawns. decisions.
Kind of. Sometimes.
Which is one big thing
Sometimes.
about, like, how do you improv like that, and how do you know what your players are going to do? I don't. But guess what? They don't know what's happening. So I can always say, that caused the bad thing to happen.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, they opened that chest. Well, you know what? You guys have pissed me off all night. That's a mimic now.
Yep. It wasn't going to be, but...
That chest was not going to be trapped. It is now.
It is now. Isn't that sad for you?
So you can just do what you want. There's full freedom available to you as a GM. You can use it.
Yeah, you can. And I think the funnest part of being a GM is crafting stories and then finding moments to bring those stories into the game itself. So I wasn't planning on bringing in the Golden Dragon storyline until I got a one piece of Clara lore from Abby. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Can you tell me what that was?
It was her husband being killed and not knowing who killed him.
How did that spawn that? Can you give me a little of why did that being the case mean you could do the story?
This is probably not going to come up.
Yeah, I mean at this point. Or if you can't say, you can't say. It's
no,
okay.
I'm thinking about what I'm planning for the next session, and if that would
I mean, I already know.
No, he was killed by Lamond.
Yeah, we all know that.
Because Lamond wanted her.
But the question was, why did her saying that prompt?
Because it gave me an opening to show that Lamond was evil.
Okay.
So it wasn't just a momentary thing. Like it was like I wasn't just going to suddenly drop it and be like, hey, Lamond is evil. Yay. Like this gave me a reason to even bring it up.
Okay. So that's one thing in the storytelling is, okay, try and find don't try and find what, how can I make this happen? It's like, okay, what would be a reason that I could use to explain this away? Mm-hmm. So like look for reasons. Yeah.
Well, and I try to base everything that I write and the way that I GM in like realism. Yeah. I don't just suddenly have things happen just because, like, that's why in my encounters, very rarely do we have encounters with like, suddenly we come around a corner and there are a bunch of goblins or a flying carpet.
You don't do random encounters.
Like, I don't do random encounters because they just don't make sense to me. I think they're kind of lame in that regard. For me GMing, for me playing, I'm totally fine with them playing, but GMing, I have a hard time with it.
Well, it does depend though also on the setting.
Yeah.
Like, where are you at? I'm traveling through the wilderness. Random encounters with wolves and stuff like that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You're in a dungeon.
Yeah.
And you're going around through this dungeon and you know there's monsters in here. Random encounter kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. We're doing a storyline in a city. That doesn't really make sense. You probably could have thrown in, I mean, if there had been, random evil beasts in the boneyard, maybe you could have thrown in a random encounter.
There were a couple of beasts within the boneyard, but it didn't make sense to bring them into the story at that time. And like, maybe if you guys had gotten lost or gone into the mist itself, if you guys had gone into the mist, that would have been bad.
Random encounters everywhere?
Random encounters everywhere, but more than that, like trying to get you guys back on track would have been difficult because it sends you all the way back. So if you guys had gone into the mist, I would have made you roll a d20. If you got 1 to 10, you were lost. And if you did like 11 to 20, you went back to the way station that you came from originally. So you would have gone all the way back to the beginning.
And start the travel again.
Start it all over again.
That would have been interesting.
That would have sucked. So I'm glad that you guys didn't do that.
That we didn't do that to you?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you guys didn't do that to you. To me. Oh my gosh. English language tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
The other thing I would say is, especially when you're improvising, be willing to laugh at yourself. Because sometimes you're going to make up stuff and it's going to be like, well, that was kind of lame.
Like, yeah.
Okay, move on. You don't have time to dwell on it. You don't have time to just be like, oh, that was bad. And it's like, I got to move on to the next thing already. So, yeah. Don't have time to think about that. Next time I'll do that differently.
Yeah. Essentially, and you're always learning and growing as a GM and as a storyteller in general. And the only advice that I can really give people if they're wanting to up their GM game, it's not to watch other GMs religiously.
No.
It's actually to read descriptions, read books that have like people like Brandon Sanderson who write incredibly beautiful descriptions of things that are going on around, descriptions of action and of setting and of clothing. And it just, you find an author that does a really good job at something you really like and just read all of their stuff.
Well, and that's one thing I think is getting good at describing things in interesting ways will do more to drawing your players than pretty much anything else you could work on.
Yeah.
If your descriptions are really interesting, from there it's using interesting storytelling mechanics and look at other mediums. It's like right now I've been looking a lot at fight scenes in movies. Fight scenes in movies have 3 acts. There's generally the initial part of the fight. There's generally a part where things look worse.
Yeah.
And you're starting to wonder.
Our hero is looking like he's losing it.
And then the final of the battle where they conquer.
Or they die.
Yep. But do we do that in D&D combat? Because the monster's abilities are the same the whole time.
No.
But you could, because most monsters have abilities, or you give them a lair action or something like that, and you don't bring that out until the middle of the fight. You wait until this is one reason why I liked the wounded. It wasn't wounded. It was the bleeding or something like that. It was a status that was from an older version of D&D, where at 50% health, suddenly that something happened, and you say, okay, they're oh gosh, I wish I remembered what the term was. It was one of the homebrew rules we covered the last week.
I think it was bleeding.
Bleeding? It was like, oh, he has the bleeding condition. And everyone just knew that meant, oh, their life's halfway down. Let's double down. And so then they start attacking in earnest. But then you suddenly pull out a lair action, or you pull out some special ability, or that suddenly sprouts wings and starts flying. And now you've got to deal with an aerial battle and suddenly up the ante. And this is one thing that they do well in the in Critical Role in their big boss battles, is there's always
Matt always puts another layer onto it.
He does. Happens in video games. And so looking at other mediums to say, okay, what makes this interesting? Here, go watch your favorite fight scenes from your action movies and be like, okay, what made this interesting as a fight scene? I can't control what the lead is doing. I can't control what the hero is doing. But what made this an interesting fight scene with the villain? And how can I do that as the villain, as the monster in this instance? And so looking at other mediums, watch movies, things like that.
Or what made it boring.
Yeah.
I think that's even a better way to deconstruct something, is to find something that didn't do it well and figure out why. Why is it lost your interest? Why do you not care? A great example of that when we're talking specifically about fight scenes is Superman, the very first Superman, Man of Steel. Where, so I guess that's not the very first, but
no, it's not.
The first of the new iterations with Henry Cavill. That fight scene with Zod at the end was so boring. And it also didn't make sense for the morality of the character of Superman. They're flying through Metropolis and they are bashing into buildings and knocking buildings over, essentially. And then suddenly he cares about human life in the station because he's going to actually see the death of this family.
See, and I think that I do see that making sense because he's never fought anyone before. He's not used to having to worry about getting knocked back in collateral damage.
No, it's true. But as soon as he figured out that's what was going on, he should have left the city.
Tried to drag
Zod out of the city. And so I had a hard time with that fight sequence because first off, it was way too long. There was way too much of the same thing happening over and over again.
And that's the thing is it was like, okay, I punch you. You punch me back. I punch you again. Like even boxing movies know to like have it kind of in sprints or something like that.
They do something with it. But that sequence and it was like 15 minutes too long. I remember looking over in the theater to my sister and my mom who were both asleep.
Granted, they fall asleep during action movies all the time.
I know, but it was just hilarious. I look over and my mom's got her head on her chest and my sister's like totally slumped to the side. It was so funny.
But yeah, so let's just look at other mediums, look at other interesting things, because it's like what made the final, as bad as, things were, what made the final fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin interesting?
The pacing of it.
The lava.
Well, the lava, but the pacing of it too, like how fast everything was, made it interesting. However, knowing what I know now about fighting and swords and stuff like that, I do look at that sequence and kind of roll my eyes a little bit.
Oh yeah. It totally is like.
Because I'm like, nope.
Well, it's like, wouldn't it be interesting if you made a monster and you give it 3 arms? You cut its attack in lower, but you had to make it 6 attacks per turn.
Oh my gosh.
So you made it to where actually the damage in the end was the same as if it only attacked twice. But just knowing that it had 6 attacks would suddenly make all the party members be like, holy crap,
scared.
We're scared of this thing. And just that would have, because the pacing of them getting attacked would have increased. So again, just to kind of bring it back to the whole point is look at every medium that you can find a correlation and then be like, what do I like about this and how do I include this in my game? But then the better you get at including it, the less you have to prep to do it because the more you know just to do it.
Yeah. And if you want to get better at GMing, just GM a lot.
Yep.
Literally, it's just do it again and again and again and again.
I mean, we've been almost every week for a year now. We just had a couple of weeks we took off.
We're getting close to episode 50 of our actual play. We actually have more, I think, tabletop train talks than we do actual play nights.
Yeah, because once a quarter, I have to go to California.
Yeah, so we missed that, and then there was like the COVID situation where we were sick, and like you would still come on and do tabletop train talks.
Yeah, but we couldn't do the campaign. That's true.
Which was hard. But yes, that is our secrets to being a lazy GM, aka it's not being lazy. In fact, it's like
it's the idea is that once you've practiced these types of things enough, you can afford to be lazy.
Yeah, you can afford to not prep the same way that you feel like you would have to.
But
otherwise.
Until you've practiced, it's gonna be a little bumpy.
Yep, it's gonna be difficult.
But I would say the biggest thing is you're starting out. Whatever you do, like you're like, okay, I'm gonna ad-lib this, and it doesn't quite turn out the way I want to. Double down on how it did turn out.
Yeah.
Because no one knows that wasn't how you planned it.
Exactly.
No one knows. So just go ahead and double down on it.
Just do it.
And then suddenly they think you're awesome. And you're like,
or they think that you had that planned.
Oh, they do.
And you're like, yeah, I'm pretty awesome. I can't do that. If I've made something up or it wasn't something I planned on having happen, I always have to tell. I'm always just like, oh my gosh, guess what, you guys?
I know there have been times where there were things that I didn't plan that completely made up right there.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever told you.
You let me believe.
Yep, I let you believe that I'm that awesome.
Well, you are.
And let your players believe you're that awesome.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, I wasn't planning that at all, you guys went completely off the rails, and so I just went along with you, and just go along with your players. Like, literally, just go along with your players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Synth
Night, though, a lot of work just to be lazy. Yeah, I do blame a lot of the reason I'm able to do that, though. Improv sessions is the amount of reading I've done, honestly, because I have so much to pull from. I used to be a voracious reader, and now I'm not as much as I used to be, but I still read a ton. But there were quite a few years where I didn't read as much. But yeah,
children made it a little harder, but
yeah, children made it difficult. But yeah, so I did want to say, I did want to comment what you said, Starry Night. You should make these into podcast thingies as well. If you guys think that we should make this into a an audio only podcast, like drop it in the chat real quick and just say like, yes, because I have thought about making these into podcasts, but I haven't totally known how to do it because it would be like a different thing from our actual play, and like publishing it on our actual play podcast, like I don't know, I'm not sure how to like do it, if that makes sense. Like I know how to do the podcast, but it's more like structuring it. Do I create a new podcast that's called Tabletop Terrain Talks presented by Party of Two and then have that be a totally separate podcast, or do I do the episodes in our current podcast? I don't know. It's a thing. So yeah, tell me in the chat if you would like that. So I've got a yes from Starry Night.
I know Synth Night, I know that a lot of times you come in and you're just like listening. John, sometimes that happens, and if you could just listen, like, while you're putting the kids to bed or stuff like that, or do things like that, let us know in the chat, and you can also message us directly. Thank you all for being here so much. Please, if you can, support the channel, follow, if you can, subscribe. If not, then please just spread the word. Share about us and our show to get more people here, because the more that are here, the more that we can do.
It's true, and the more that you guys share, it really helps us build this community of gamers and people. And we do have a new show that's going to be coming out in the next couple of months, and we are really excited about that. We don't have all of the details to give out yet. We can't talk about it too much, but we really want to build this community that has been created of GMs and gamers and stuff. So help us with our goal of creating a fun community.
Help us help you. Help us help you.
Anyway, did you guys decide anything on the guests for one shots thing yet, by the way? That idea has been put on the back burner. We do still want to do it, but it's been put on the back burner for this in lieu of this other talk show that we're doing.
Yep.
So yeah.
However, I will be looking for guests for the next campaigns and things like that. So if you're interested, just let me know, and then I will, when I have extra characters that I need something more than an NPC, that I will reach out and I will say, hey, do you want to come on for a couple of episodes, just like we did with Tomes of the Chaos Bard, and join in the game.
Exactly. So just let us know. Starry Night is definitely interested. I kind of figured. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with us, you guys. Have a good Monday night and have a great rest of your week, because I said so.
Well, the next
I'm the queen.
Yes, you're the queen. The next campaign, Starry Night, will actually be 5th edition. So we'll be doing D&D. All right. Well, thank you all so very much. And we are going to sign off for the night. Should we see if there's someone to raid?
Yeah, let's go see if there's anybody out there that
Let's see if there's any awesome shows that are happening right now.
Right this very instant.
At this very instant, if my computer will.
Good night,
let's see, I've got queue time, but they tend to end around this time.
Yeah, they do.
We've got third action. Since oh no, he's off.
Let's raid into third action.
All right, third action. So, let me remember how to do this. Because I do this wrong all the time. And it's fun like that.
Oh my gosh.
Third action. Here we are. They are playing Pathfinder right now.
Yay!
Ooh, all right, here we go. We're going to start this thing. We're going to start this raid. And we are getting ready to go. Thank you all so very much. You all have a wonderful night. And we love you all.
It's true, we do.
And remember, it only takes 2. And there we go.